Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, let's start. First do my introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Chen. I'm from Marketing Awards. And Marketing Awards is a global food and beverage packaging design competition. We are based on the industry platform led by FBIF, the Food and Beverage Innovation Forum. And we were born to encourage brilliant packaging designs to promote communication between the global and the local design communities and to facilitate business between design agencies and brands. Today, we are so excited to invite two of our new juries, Bruno Singulani from Global Brand Identity and Design at Nestlé, and Chen Newell, Head of Realization at Pearfisher. Now we would like to first invite our juries to introduce themselves. Jen, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chen Newell. I'm Head of Realisation at Pearfisher London. Pearfisher are an independent branding agency, and we've got studios in London, New York, San Francisco and Copenhagen. And I look after our realisation offer alongside a team of strategists, futurists and designers. I've worked in the packaging industry for about 25 years now, and I've been with the Pearfisher team for 4. And the majority of my role is a technical capacity within realisation, from 3D engineering and materials through to print production. What I most love about my job is that I help people bring their ideas to life. So it's exciting, and there's always a new technology, new material that I can kind of help people focus on. So it's good.
Cool. Thank you. Bruno, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Chen. And well, my name is Bruno Singulani. I'm from Brazil originally. I've been working for Nestlé now for almost 6 years. Currently, I lead the global visual identity, brand and visual identity and design for one of our strategic business units, which is called Food. And those are my babies here. All those brands that are from iconic heritage, massive popular brands like Maggie to freshly acquired new business models like Mindful Chef in the UK and many others. I mean, it's really a privilege to work in such a rich environment with so many lovely brands to play with. Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits on being on the client side, but still kind of in between, right? Being a specialist, a designer. My background is as a designer. I've been working on agencies before. I graduated as an industrial designer, then working more on branding and graphic side of the force, but pretty much still a designer. That's how I like to think about.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for your introduction, Bruno. Okay, so today our topic is Designer's Talk, how to successfully realize your design. And talking about design realization, many people might think of like it will involve a lot of players, like the designers, the strategists, and some people from the manufacturer side. Yeah, but I don't think that many people have a very clear idea about realization of an idea from conception to completion. Some people, the first reaction may be like, okay, I will go to a professional design agency to take care of that. But I think it is also important for us to know more about design realization so that we could have a better collaboration between the both parties. So first, Jane, I would like to ask you a question. If I am a potential client and I would like to launch a new cookie product, and I want the package to be cool enough to attract people. So how would you explain this process? How would you explain how to realize my idea to a package for this client?
Sure. So it's a many-stepped process, but initially we'd start off with our futures and strategy team would work out a brand positioning for the product. And whilst they're working on that, I would be doing all the technical behind the scenes. So I would speak to the people that are actually producing your cookies, find out all about them, what their shelf life is, how they're being produced, and start getting some kind of idea of what kind of materials we might need to put them in, to look at things like shelf life. Has anyone done any testing on different materials? And that kind of information is pretty critical for our design teams, because it gives us an understanding of how we might need to package that product, and it gives us a direction to focus on. So we'll look at what's there right now, but I'll also bring new materials into the mix. So potentially we might be looking at a mixed polymer material. So I'll be asking questions like, could we make it a mono material to make it more recyclable, for example, or could we use something that's more sustainable, and what would that do to the shelf life of the product? Or does it get packaged into a secondary piece of packaging, depending on what the price point is? So all of that kind of strategy and futures work at the front is going to determine a rough price point for that cookie. So that then gives me the direction that I need to focus on in terms of materials and design. And so once I've got that, I'll then pull together a kind of mood board of materials for client and for our internal design teams. And we'll kind of work in partnership with everybody involved. So with all the technology people, client side, with the clients, and with our design teams and our future teams, we all work together and feed into the project to make sure that we're kind of, everyone's being appeased, everyone's getting what they need from the project, and everything that we're creating is actually going to work in reality. So I think that's the key thing, is like, can the design actually be realized? Is it something that works at the price point for the product? And is it going to preserve and give the best consumer experience for that product? Because if it doesn't keep it fresh, that's going to be the key thing for a consumer. They're all about the taste. The product and the packaging has to initially make them buy it, but if it tastes bad, they're not going to repurchase. So it's a balancing act all the way through. And so there's a lot of kind of testing. We'll make pilot molds and models, and kind of do some line trials on different materials even before the design's finished, to make sure that whatever we're creating is going to be fit for purpose. And then we'll follow that all the way through design process. It'll potentially have mock-ups made. It might go into research. So we might make some sample trials and test them with consumers, maybe make some design tweaks afterwards to really kind of fine tune that design. And then my team will actually build all the final files as well, and speak to the printers and make sure that the end result that we achieve is exactly what it needs to be. Yeah. But it doesn't even stop there, because when we release files, we might then attend a press pass. So if it's a global product that's going out all over the world, potentially we'll go to the first print trial, set the color standards, and then make sure they get sent to every producer, because it might not be being produced in just one site. It could be produced in multiple sites all over the globe. So it totally depends on the scale. You know, we work with small brands that are just launching and they might have 20,000 cookies as a first batch, or it could be somebody like Nestlé that's making something huge that's a global rollout, which is a bit different in terms of production. So yeah.
It goes a long way for you to reach maybe from the conception to completion, and it's very important for you and with the client to reach a consensus, so that you are working on a solid basis, that you have the same understandings, and to keep up with each other all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's all of, and the key thing for us as well, we focus a lot on sustainability. So we need to understand the markets that it's going into, different recycling situations in different countries, and just trying to kind of globally align that can be quite tricky. So, you know, it's really good for us to understand exactly what's going to happen to that product after it's produced. It's not just about making it look beautiful. It's about really getting under the skin and understanding what that product is.
Yeah, it's pretty responsible to do all that, to take care of the market launch, even after the product is being produced, is being packed and going on the shelves, and then you'll still look at that. Okay, yeah. Of course, thank you. And Bruno, What if you have a task that your team is going to take care of to update the existing package of a cookie product? So what would be in your mind about how to realize some ideas, maybe some innovative ideas to make an even better package for that product?
Yeah. Well, just before answering your question, just wanted to build on something that Jennifer was talking about. First of all, I think realization or this bringing to life something is what design is all about, right? Design without that is not design, it's just an idea, it's just creative thinking. Yeah. So there's a huge value to in this last mile of the process, making sure that you will be very truthful to the original concepts, to the intentions, the creative but strategic intentions as well. Mm-hmm. And we know that within those last miles that you can find so many hurdles and obstacles to really get what you really wanted. So it's of huge value. But to your question, I think the first reaction would be, what is your hunger or appetite for change, right? I mean, there's a big spectrum of evolution to revolution, and that will define pretty much how much you invest in specific design elements and brand properties that you want to touch. If it's about a big repositioning conceptually, you're targeting new consumers and shifting your positioning within the marketplace and versus your competitors, then it's a super fun job, because those are normally the most exciting ones because you have a bit more freedom. But at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility, because at the end of the day, if it's an established brand, you don't want to alienate your existing consumers. And so there's a lot of course, some research. And as Nestlé, we like a lot to make sure that we are safe. I mean, we're a Swiss company. We don't take that many risks. But as a design process, I like to think that if you have a great understanding of your brand and the competitive landscape, the environment, your key players, and especially what's going on. And I mentioned before that we use a lot the framework of semiotics about and how the emerging codes are coming, what are dominant codes and residual codes, and understanding that journey and understanding your context and your own brand truth, you can better judge how there you or how revolutionary you want to be. But that's pretty much also a strategic decision, right? Even if the entire category is moving super fast, your main players are being very bold on design. But if your strategic decision, your business decision is still to be traditional, classic, more mainstream, and that's working business-wise, that's okay, right? I mean, it's a matter also of a strategic decision. How much do you want to move the needle? And I think those are the key elements that even before going to the design work itself, in my current role, that's how I approach it. I need to understand those other elements of the equation to be able to deliver the design solution.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Jennifer, are you still there?
I think we lost Jennifer.
Yeah, that's Zach.
Apologies, sorry, I had a bit of a technical issue.
Oh.
Welcome back, Jennifer.
Welcome back. Okay, so concerning your case, it will be like a lot of preparation work even before the real design process.
Yeah, exactly. And because especially on my side, there's so much of stakeholder management work to be done to align those expectations, because sometimes one guy from one specific role thinks that it should be more disruptive and we should revolutionize the brand. And maybe another important stakeholder might differ and thinks slightly different. So it's also part of my role to find those internal alignments before even going to a design agency or even starting internally the strategic documents to kick off the project. So that's also another super important part of the process to finally get to the realization part of it, right?
Yeah, I think for you, it's like, even if you get a design idea into realization, if it doesn't meet expectation from your internal team, it means nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. We don't even get there. We don't even get there. If there's not enough alignment, the process simply doesn't move to the next phase. And that's, I mean, and we make sure that we want to trial and pilot and prototype as soon as possible, because when you at least materialize, still not in a final version, but I'm a big believer of prototyping, or fast prototyping, in that sense that you can literally convince and get people's buy-in. I mean, it's this the big old belief of don't tell me, show it, right? Show me. So we basically try to show as soon as possible the closest of the final idea as we can. And that helps to get those conversations and those discussions in a more, design normally it's somehow perceived as subjective, but we try to bring some rational and some fact-based discussions to this process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think you would like to talk more about that challenges in your case studies, right? Actually, our jurors have prepared 2 case studies for us. And so as we are going to the second topic, like what might be the expected challenges in the design realization process, and to see what are the key strategies that maybe for us to get more ready before we go to the design realization process. We would like to learn more from your cases. And so maybe, Bruno, would you like to just continue with your case sharing?
Yeah, sure. Well, the case I picked to share with you guys here today, it's something quite recent and very close to my heart. I'm very proud of it. It was an exciting project to be involved in and leading here on Nestlé, because it's a new brand. And as I mentioned, we have lots of huge brands, very established, mainstream, iconic. And it's not every day that we create a brand from scratch. I mean, differently from Pearfisher, that they are probably doing lots of new brands with startups and that kind of stuff. At Nestlé, or at least in my role, but overall, we normally deal with established and heritage brands somehow. So this one, it's called Maziste. It's a new food brand, and the main challenges that we faced, and I mean, there are so many, but I will try to pick the main ones in different steps or different phases of the project. But the main one, the first one, was actually this decision about making it a new brand. Because we knew by a business opportunity and a target setting and the environment and the context of our category, how it was evolving, we knew that there was a white spot, an opportunity, a business opportunity for us. And then the first reaction we have as a company, more than 1,000 brands on our portfolio. So why would we create a new one, another one? So can't we already use something that we have? Can't we leverage all the consumer knowledge and awareness about these brands? And that was the first struggle, because we were strongly, I mean, the core team was strongly believing that we needed a new brand, because one of the key pillars to establish this brand would have, it was supposed to be an authentic, modern, authentic brand, because it's about a specific cuisine. And then we didn't want something like Maggie that talks about all the different cuisines that we have in the world, because that would somehow diminishes a bit the credibility to deliver that value for consumers. And on top of that, we knew that we were also trying to target new consumers that sometimes it's harder for Maggie to achieve. So that was the first one. And there was a lot of rational and strategic thinking to validate this choice of creating a new brand. Then it comes all the brand positioning, the visual identity development. And then, of course, there's a lot of consumer assessment, internal validation, trying to always not necessarily fully listen to consumers, because we knew we were also bringing something new to the category. We wanted to be somehow disruptive. So we didn't want necessarily just to please the consumer, we wanted to check the pulse but get more directional feedback, not necessarily straightforward what to apply. And that process was also a bit challenging because normally we use consumers to validate our options and not necessarily to help us build our strategic beliefs or to build and to push forward what we want to do. So it's also somehow culturally speaking something different, and was another challenge, how to listen to consumers but use that to learn instead of just validating a design route. That was the second big challenge. And then, of course, the third one, it has more to do on rolling out and implementing it. This project was intended since the beginning to be an above market project. So it wasn't intended to be one specific country or a specific market. And when you're dealing with multiple markets, in this case, for instance, France, Netherlands, the UK, and Switzerland, you can only imagine the different cultural backgrounds and how every market believes, and they are indeed, they're very different, but we wanted something as a global brand, something that we could leverage and roll out across. And finding this common ground without compromising, without jeopardizing our original baby, the thing that we really wanted to protect and we really wanted to be like that, it was another challenge because you need to bring them all on board. You want them to be engaged and feel part of that, right? It's not your brand and they're gonna execute. It's not gonna work like that. So you want to have them excited and engaged with that, but somehow you need to use the power of ideas to convince them about that. Because at the end also, I mean, and this is given to the Nestlé structure, we don't have the authority to simply say, that's what you're gonna do and there's no discussion. We can try, there will be a lot of political fights in between, but it's much easier when you just convince by the power of the idea. And that's something I truly believe in. It's not that simple. Ideas are not that black and white, right? Like there are ideas that you might like and someone else might not like, but that's part of the job as well to create the right storytelling behind and the rationale to move it forward. And then finally, when it's to materialize the thing, there's so many different, and we were really pushing to be fast and agile. So, and for instance, one of the key elements of this new brand is the brand color. And we had different substrates like plastic, paper, and in different formats coming from different suppliers, trying to match all of that and still not losing weeks of rework. It was quite a lot of challenges, and somehow trying to find done is better than perfect. That was the mindset. I mean, it might not be perfect at the first stage, but we will fix later. And that mindset was also very helpful to enable us to move forward fast and deploy still in a very coherent, consistent way. We're super proud and happy about that. But we know there are things that we need to fix or adjust. For instance, even in the product formats, we already went, because there are some things that you can only learn once it's on the shelf and consumers are starting to touch it literally. Or they are already on the trucks going to the retailers, because in that movement, some things might get crashed or a little twisted. So there are some things that you can only learn after the launch. So my recommendation is to somehow be cool about that, because anyway, you will have to fix and improve and learn anyway afterwards. So done is better than perfect. And that was kind of the mindset.
Yeah, I can really feel the hard work you have done for this project. And it's like a struggle in my eyes, a struggle between the existing things and the new things, and the struggle between whether we should change our existing assets or to build something new on it. And in the later phase, it's like, okay, should we listen to the consumers or should we stick to our existing values? And like at the end, it's like coordination, because as the in-house team, you need to collaborate with the outside agencies. However,
exactly.
Yeah, you of course you have your positionings and you have your standings. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, we all know innovation is not a democratic process. Huh? There has to be some strong leadership, strong beliefs. Otherwise, you just simply you get to something generic or bland and whatever. So it's not an easy role to be in, to be the bad cop in the meetings and saying, okay, I appreciate the comment, I respect your opinion, but we will do differently. It's not something easy to say anyway, so, but it's part of the job. And if you do it, I mean, and if you have the strong beliefs and you have the arguments, it's less of a subjective discussion. And then people, at the end, they understand.
Cool. So do you have anything to say about this project, Jennifer?
No, I just agree. Sometimes it's about almost convincing everyone in the room that your way is the right way. They're the most difficult discussions and the difficult things to happen, but everything for me stems always from the strategic approach. So, you know, that is the strength and the belief and the positioning that you're trying to put behind your product. It's so important at every step that you check in with that and make sure that everything you're doing aligns to that kind of approach and that kind of vision for your product, and only compromise if you really have to, if there's no alternative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that feedback is not appreciated or there's no value on that. Of course there is. I mean, and we listen in the entire time. The only trap is if you try to please everyone, that's that's the recipe for a design disaster. Don't try to please everyone, not even the consumers. You cannot please all the ones. So you need to be very sure of what you want to achieve, have clear success criteria. I mean, I want to be perceived as, and sometimes through design research is about attributes, right? I want to be perceived as modern, or I want to be perceived as easy to understand, or a brand that fits my lifestyle. So you need to have that clarity on success criteria and be open to the feedbacks, listen, process that, go back to your beliefs and your design principles, your brand fundamentals, and then you check, I mean, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And then it's how you move forward. It doesn't mean that be blind and go forward to what you believe. That's not also a very good, might work. Well, many startups and entrepreneurs, they did it like that, right? They start something they believe, and that's how they do it. Yeah. Some are successful. Most of them, they're not. I mean, we know the successful rate of opening new businesses, I mean, at least on the environments I'm aware, but normally is not the best recipe.
Yeah, of course, because you don't know what will happen in the future at the very beginning. So every step is like a trial. Sometimes you may consider different ideas. You may maybe wondering whether I'm doing the right thing, whether I'm doing the things that the consumer really want. But sometimes you think that, okay, I need to stick to my original belief. I know what I really want to deliver to people. And there I can feel a struggle between them. But to every project, for every entrepreneur and for every in-house team, it's like this struggle always accompanies with them. Yeah, it is something we have to deal with, but we need to know what we really want to deliver to people. Yeah, all the way. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your case sharing. And Jen, I think I'd like to share your case to us. Okay.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Hello, I think there's.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I lost sound for a second. We couldn't hear you.
Okay, I'm inviting you to share your case to us.
Sure, no problem. So today I thought I'd talk to you about a new product launch for a brand called Tonic. And basically, they came to us with a proposition for a premium spaced coconut water, and it's made from all natural ingredients. And most of their competitors within the space have an element of artificiality in them. And so their big kind of challenge to us was, if others are artificial fueled, what's your smart and naturally powered drink of choice? So their coconut water is designed in a way that it's to give you energy and gives you, it's sparkling, so it gives you a bit of effervescence, but it's got multivitamins in it, and it's really good for like post-exercise. It's been developed by a nutritionist called Zana Morris, and she's a health and fitness entrepreneur. And so we were trying to create something that would go into a wellness space, but in a much more premium way than all of the other coconut waters that were in the market. So we started to look at, you know, obviously this is quite a small volume when it's starting off. How are we going to package it? So there's all the materials in the world. We could put it in a Tetra Pak, but it would look just like every other product on the market. We could put it in a can, but there's quite a few competitors in a can and they're not really queuing premium. So let's put it in glass. So the decision is made, let's go for glass as a material. But then how do we make glass sustainable? How do we premiumize it, and what's available to us? So it then becomes a bit of a hunt to see what's available on the market in terms of structure and what will actually fit the properties of the liquid. So the liquid in this case is carbonated, which then restricts how many bottles that you can search from, because a lot of bottles you can't put carbonated liquid in. So it kind of narrows down all the way until we decide that we need to be in a glass that's got recycled content. It needs to hold a carbonated liquid, and it needs to feel premium in some way. So that's the brief to my team. So I'll look for something. So the design team will start working on the strategic approach and the designs for this product. And in the meantime, we're talking to suppliers all over the world to see what's available and pulling all of those shapes and samples into boards so that the design team can look and pick and choose. So we ended up in a Boston round shape, which was available in amber glass, could take the carbonated liquid, cued the premiumness that we wanted, and fit with the brand really well in terms of it was brown and it kind of felt like it was in the world of a coconut. So that was kind of the reason behind that choice. But then we were trying to work out how we would decorate this bottle, and we knew that we wanted it to be a circular bottle. So we wanted it to be able to be washed and reused. So we started talking to some glass suppliers, and we were talking to one in particular called OI, and they have this really cool new digital print technology where you can print directly on glass. So you don't need to use labels, you just print directly. And it also gives you the opportunity to build depth and texture. So you can actually create something that's really tactile in the hand. You can actually feel the texture in it. And so we designed this whole kind of coconut illustration to go around our branding on the front. And the idea was that it would feel like the flakes inside a coconut when you actually felt it in the hand on the bottle. So it gives you this really kind of beautiful thing that you're holding, but functionally is really simple to print because it's just a one color digital print. But also because of the technology, it means that you can wash it at a high temperature and refill the bottle. So it helped us to create this kind of circular system that we were looking for, in that we could wash and reuse the bottle without the print being taken off, without having to relabel it each time. And so the only pieces of the bottle that actually needed to change would be the crown closure and a little tamper seal. So we were like, well, how do we cue that this is a really fresh product? It's got quite a short shelf life. It needs to be, you know, kept in a fridge. It's, you know, it's different to all of the others. So we thought we'd use this tamper seal to actually date the product. So you knew exactly when it had been produced and made. It would tell you when it was going to expire, but it also kind of cued that kind of craft and premiumness that made you think this is not a mass-produced product. This has been produced exactly for me as a healthy alternative to something that's mass-produced. And so it's got ginger juice, magnesium, probiotics in the liquid. So we highlighted this on the back as a health benefit, just with a simple ingredients list. And it just kind of gave us this really expressive world to play with, so that when we started to take this off brand and into kind of environment shots and kind of all the marketing materials as well, you've got this really beautiful looking bottle, feels like the inside of a coconut. It's really tactile in the hand and works for this kind of premium space. And it did really well. So I think slide 4 is the one that zoomed in on the texture, so you can kind of see how it worked. But the idea was that you would buy this product in gyms, you'd consume it, and then you'd pop the bottle back in a crate, and those crates would go off, be rewashed and refilled for next time round. So everything really stems back to that strategy at the beginning. It's like, what's right for this product wouldn't be right for every product. And you have to look at the environment that you're launching in. So going back to what Bruno was saying, you know, if this was going to be a global launch, this proposition doesn't work in the same way. But you have to look at the circumstances for each brand to see exactly what would be the right thing to do in that circumstance and what kind of fits with that kind of design approach.
Okay, I think it's like your job is more or less like putting a lot of pieces together. You have mentioned a lot of details in this project. As you said that this project is like you are finding materials to meet the expectations of your client. But yeah. I think, because I'm asking you to share from the perspective of a design agency. I think a question that might come from some designers will be like, okay, I think that this material is suitable for this project, but how could I convince my client that this is the target material that we are going to choose? How can I convince them that in this way, the project can meet the goal of what we want and can also fit our budget?
So budget is always a key thing for us. Budget is the thing that defines everything. And so for us, it's really interesting to know at strategy phase what the actual price point of the product is. Mm-hmm. And from the experience that myself and my colleagues have, we will kind of know what materials will fit within that price point. So, you know, we're not going to suggest something that's going to cost £5 per bottle to make if your price point of your product is £2.50, because it's not going to be suitable. So it is very important at the beginning to have that strategy set and to know how much roughly you're going to sell your product for and what the target audience is. And all of the material choices that we make are influenced by that proposition at the beginning. So we'll never suggest something that's just totally out of the realms of possibility. Cool. It's about keeping it real, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah, so you are playing the role of leading the client to the right direction based on your experience.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Okay, pretty cool. And do you have something to say about this project, Bruno? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was muted. Now, I was just about to build what Jennifer was sharing now at the end. And if there is a message all out to the designers, I think dealing with frustration is something that you have to learn to. I mean, our profession is about knowing that you will try your best to do what you want to do. And in many cases, it's not going to be 100%, and you have to compromise and adjust here and there. And it doesn't mean that you need to be comfortable and just say, okay, they don't want, I don't care, move forward. It's not that. But you need to be, and I think building relationships and being empathy is a key word as well. If you have the trust of your client or of your agency in this relationship, whichever side you are, if you can build a trustful relationship, then things will move much easier. Of course, within a logic and rational spectrum, right? We're, as Jennifer said, we're not going to propose things that will kill the profit or the feasibility, and then the business doesn't stand. But there are some elements that are not about budget or cost that you can facilitate when you build trust and you have this empathy to understand the other side and why they're pushing to one direction whilst you are trying to go into the other one. When you understand that, you might better convince them on the contrary, and why do you want to go here? But you need to, my point is that normally as creators, and I've been in this, I mean, been there, done that, we normally have our egos and we feel like divas. We know what to do. We are artists, right? When we create. And who are them telling me that this is not working or this color is not nice? But that behavior or that posture will not help you at all. And I've seen great designers falling one after another because of that ego, because of that posture. And then basically what happens is, what you really want is to bring that idea alive, right? Bring it and materialize that. And that posture will not help you at all. So building that trust, being empathetic to the other side, understanding their frustrations or their fears is the key to successfully bring them to your side or convince them to the right design decision. Because there are, I mean, if you go straight to the point, there are right or better design decisions, and there are decisions with lots of compromises that might work or not, but it's not going to be great. And the difference between okay design and great design might be on the details, really on the typography selection or the shade of pink, because someone might say, but pink for food doesn't make sense. Right? And maybe from one Pantone number to another Pantone number, even if it's the same page, might make a big difference, trust me. And so the difference between okay and great, it's in the details. And to get the right details, you need to build trust, be empathetic to the other side, and be likable. I mean, it's easy to not like designers when you are like all behaving like that. And I think that's an important tip to my fellow creatives on the other side of the world.
Oh, thank you so much. And what about you, Jen?
I couldn't agree more. Everything for me is in the detail. I'm quite detail oriented because I'm technical, so that's kind of just how my brain works. So I will look at everything to the minutest degree, down to how we set files up. Getting the best print quality at the end of a job is equally as important as creating a good design at the beginning. So like that whole journey all the way through, the attention to detail is kind of where I focus. It's the little things that can make such a big difference. So I couldn't agree more. It's the important part of, like, you could design a great design, but if you don't put it into production in the right way, it can fall down at the last hurdle, and then you don't get a good result. You need to kind of keep that eye on things all the way through the supply chain, right the way through to production. And even after production, I'm always going to the supermarket and putting things that we've made off the shelf and going, what's gone on here? And I'll take photos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
life, right?
you might approve something and you think that's the reality, but actually that's the reality on your database of proof prints. And when you go to the shelf, then you see the real reality, and not necessarily the same always.
Exactly.
Maybe every designer has a collection of what he or she has made at her home, that they will always be like, okay, I made this, that, and that. Okay. Wow, that is pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your sharing. I think we've got some questions from the audience. This is a question. Okay. This is maybe a challenging question. He's asking if something we can learn, is there anything that we can only learn after the product has already been launched? So what kind of adjustments can we take after seeing these problems after the market launch? Yeah. So this is a question that, because Bruno, you have said that when you are making a decision, you need to go through a process like getting everyone approved of this idea and to make a strategic decision. But a realistic problem for some brands, maybe like only after the market launch, they find there are some problems with their packages or design.
Yeah.
So what kind of adjustment can they do at that time?
Yeah, I mean, you can always adjust almost everything, right? I mean, you can change almost everything, but ideally you should have to get to a point that after the launch you have fine tunings to be made. Otherwise, you need to revisit your process, right? If you have to change too much. But in our case, just to give an example, we have one of the boxes. It's like a meal kit, like a squared box, and there is an opening that acts like opening a door or something like that. So we thought about that as a ritual for the brand to open, to invite you to this new cuisine and so on. So there's a lot of semiotic logic behind and all of that. And this is made through a kind of laser cut. So it's a very sensitive thing. So it has to be easy to open. So consumers will just get at home and click there and pull up and it's open. What happens is that through the transportation process and even through handling and putting them on the shelf, sometimes people don't necessarily take the right care. And then some of the boxes were open on the shelf before consumers buying them because it was not with the right intensity of the laser cut. Of course, then there's like minimal adjustments, technical adjustments that you can do afterwards, but you only learn that if you do an extensive simulation of all that process, transporting, putting on shelf and all of that. But even simulating that, it's never exactly as the real life. Because when the guy that works on the retailer, he is late and he wants to pull everything on the shelf as fast as he can, he's not going to treat the box as in a simulation, right? He's going to pull them, blah, 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 blah. And then in that process, something that might not resist. And that was the case. I think those elements of size or material, if the material, for instance, with the light on the retailer doesn't necessarily reflect the color as you were expecting, you might want to either change the varnish or slightly even change the color itself, because normally your main channel is specific, and there's kind of not a norm, but most of the lights in that specific channel are more cold, and that influences your brand color in a direction that you don't want. So you might want to compensate that afterward. And those things, yeah, you can try to foresee that and plan in advance, but normally it's not the case. And those kind of details, you might want to change. Even the size of the shelves in some case, and that's something you can plan in the, you know, the size and the height of the space you will have. But that's for the majority of the stores, right? And then you have very small stores with specific shelves that are not the standard, or kind of smaller shelves, and then your product doesn't fit as you wanted there. And that was another learning. And you might not want to change completely your pack, because that's the exception, is not the rule. But what would be your way to adapt to that exception without compromising your brand display, or your exposure there? And in this case, instead of just putting them laying down one on top of the other, and then you only see the side panel, which is a disaster. You want to see the front of pack, beautiful colors, the food appetite appeal, and all of it. So how do you make a turnaround on that? And then you might need a creative solution or a specific display for smaller stores. But it's something you only learn when it's already out there.
Yeah, of course. Things don't usually go as expected. I think that it's very common for many brands, like when they are finding, oh, there's a problem. Why didn't I see that before? But
no.
It's sad that it's never late to change them in time.
Yeah.
And don't compromise on that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have something to add? Jane?
Not really. Just the key thing for me is varnishes. Varnishes is the one bit that tends to go wrong. Anything that isn't a gloss varnish can be susceptible to marking if it rubs against another surface. So that's like a key one for us. That's always slight issue, because in a lot of markets, matte is far more premium than gloss. So everyone's like, cool, we'll have a matte varnish. But if those things rub against each other, they can mark. Also, if you use certain finishes, you can get fingerprints on them quite easily. So if it's something that people pick up and put down, maybe it then ends up with fingerprint marks on it. So there's like lots of things like that you don't really have any experience of until it's in the stores, basically, and it's actually being used by people.
Yeah. Of course. Okay, we are taking another question. Okay. So this is about the time, the right timing for redesigning. The person is wondering, how do you know that it's the right time to change your brand? Or how do you know it's the right time to rebrand?
No. Well, if you allow me, Jennifer, I think I have a.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's because sometimes, and I've once heard, more than once actually, I've heard, if it's not broken, why fix it? And that might something that business people will tell you, but it's working still. We're selling pretty well. Why do we want to change it? And there are multiple examples of brands going quite well and still evolving their identity. And the reason why is because they are aware of, again, going back to that semiotic logic of what are those emerging codes, what's going on outside that might not still be mainstream, but those small players that are not even in the market share readings, and they might feel very little right now, but all those small players in a collection, they are influencing your consumers' frame of reference, visual reference. So, and this goes beyond your own category. I mean, you might look first at your own category. That's how the category is evolving. Those born new players, they look like this. They are not showing more the full pizza picture. They show only one slice, or not even showing a pizza. Those are kind of the new signals and emerging codes that you must be aware of to understand when it's time to move. Because the tricky part is that not all of those emerging codes will become dominant one day and will be mainstream. You might get lost if you just try to be trendy and disrupt, but just by the sake of disruption, especially with big brands like the ones I'm talking about. But understanding that context and reading this map of the evolution of visual codes within your category and beyond, it's the way I would recommend to map the readiness of your brand to evolve, or the need of your brand to evolve. And there's a very interesting book, I forgot the name of the guy who wrote it, but it's about iconicity and iconic brands. And he has this big, nice quote is about, don't chase the new, innovate the old, especially for iconic brands. Don't just go out there and try to behave funky and new and trendy and all of that. If you have a brand and it's a successful brand in different proportions, I'm not only talking about multi-billionaire brands. If it's working, build on that, evolve it, improve. But there's nothing more powerful to brands than consistency and iconicity. If you build, and that takes time. It's through time and consistency that you can finally get to the point on having just a symbol, a graphic element there to represent your brand and communicate much more than just a regular symbol.
Yeah, because the time changes, but some heritage is very necessary for every brand. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think this question maybe is for Jane, because many brands, they would love to see their product to have a strong video impact, and but how do you see that whether a package is delivering a strong video impact to the consumers on the shelves as an agency?
Okay, this is quite an easy one for us. So as part of the strategic approach at the beginning, we'll always do an audit of the market. So we'll look at all the competitors within a certain space and within the space that this is going to evolve into. So maybe even if it's going into a premium tier, we'll look at what the core kind of variants are in that tier and what their direct competitors are doing. As part of the design process, we always show our designs visualized on a fake shelf, if you like, so a shelf shot. So it shows them against all the competitors. You can actually see the shelf stand out close up at a foot and at 5 meters. So how your perception of that brand looks, and we'll build that in digital boards right at the beginning phases of a design, so that you can actually understand how it's delivering on that. So it's quite an important thing to have that stand out. And how do you stand out in some markets and some spaces where the shelf is so busy with color and vibrancy and it's like completely multicolored? It could be that your pack is quite simple in comparison, and that gives you the standout when you're fighting against so much kind of color and brand ownership. But it all has to tie into that strategy, because you can't just, you know, say I'm going to be white if your brand heritage is orange, for example. You need to keep your heritage and work that in to give you that shelf standout, and that's where the designers have to be really clever. That's, I say, one of their biggest challenges is how do you differentiate and give standout.
Yeah, it becomes a difficulty only when you have to, you have to consider these things like, I have to use this color, so what should I do with it? Yeah. And what can I do with that? Yeah, so challenge comes at that time, because as you said that we have some virtual emulations so that people can see what the product will be like on the shelves.
Yeah. And we use some clever cheats sometimes. So we did a rebrand of a cracker brand recently, and we designed the front of the pack so that it tessellated. So basically, as you stacked packs on top of each other, it just created a bigger canvas, almost like a wallpaper of that branding on the shelf. So when you got all of the products that were together in the supermarket, even though the variants changed color, you created this big wall of like ownable brand area that just belonged to this one brand and was really kind of just unique to them. Coke are one of the people that have always done it really, really well. They have very, very strong branding, very strong standout and brand colors. And it's about kind of creating that impact for your brand in whatever way you do it. So there's a lot of kind of clever techniques that we're using to actually maximize shelf space and actually give you that impact on shelf. The other thing to bear in mind, I think the biggest thing that we always encounter is looking at how people put the product on shelf. So is it taken out and individually stacked? Is it in a carrier case? And if it's in a case or a shelf ready piece of packaging, what does that packaging do for your shelf standout? Because if your product's inside it, for example, with biscuits, you know, what if all your products at the back of and then you just see the cardboard because consumers have bought all the ones at the front and there's just loads at the back. What happens to them? What's their shelf standout like? Can you be clever with your packaging and design it so they roll forwards? You know, there's so many factors to each piece of design. You have to just find that one little nugget of sort of a gem of an idea to bring it to life and make it stand out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so last question. Do you have any suggestions for online brands? As you know that today, a lot of brands are going on the e-commerce channels. Yeah, do you have anything to share about that? For them to maybe create a visual impact online?
It's difficult. It depends on the size of the organization. For small startups, it's all about influencers. It's all about getting that exposure and becoming the latest trend to kind of get themselves known. But for me, it's also about the unboxing experience. When you receive something that you've bought online to your home, how it appears to you and how it's packaged and what that experience of opening and using and holding that product is like critical for me. It's the bit where your consumer really engages with your brand. They have to engage online to purchase, but in person is where they fall in love with it.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. And I can only add just quickly, I mean, I think there are some interesting best practices for e-commerce, for instance, and Amazon is kind of setting the rules in that area for like mobile hero images, where you kind of simplify your product visual for a mobile expression. So you clean up the unnecessary stuff. But this is for the case when you're transferring something from the real shelf to the digital shelf. When you're designing for a digital shelf, then I think it's a bit trickier because still you are playing within a category. And again, going back to that frame of references, consumer will probably compare in their minds, even if they're not shopping in a real shelf, what does that product sell? What is the benefit of that? And it's easier to be visually disruptive on a digital shelf or very minimalistic because you're not fighting for visual attention in a real packaged shelf. So it's in that sense, and graphically might feel simpler, but you still must taking into consideration category norms and key messages and how you depict those key messages. Because what I see, and that's a bit of my personal perception, is that many brands, they behave like digital brands or like apps or any kind of more digital stuff, but they're still product goods. And they rely on all the other elements to communicate the product benefits. Or I mean, if you're selling on your own space or website and you control all of that. But yeah, I might be old style in that. I still think you should try to communicate the key ones on your main assets, which is still your pack. That's got how you're going to deliver that, and consumers will finally touch it, have it at home, and experience the brand through that real device.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you today for your very valuable sharings to our audience. And yeah, and thank you for you too, for your support to Marketing Awards. Yeah, this year we are also opening for entries. So people who are interested, who are in the design world, please come to us. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for sharing today. Very nice sharings and a very nice meeting with both of you.
Thank you. Have a lovely break and a Happy New Year for all of you. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year in advance, and maybe Merry Christmas in advance too. Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.